Good morning, everybody. I'm Captain Tommy Scoble, and you are on the lifeboat. Good morning. How are you? It's Wednesday. Hope you're having a good one. Coffee. I have cut energy drinks out of my life completely, people. Done. No more energy drinks. And this is my first cup of coffee in a really long time. A really, really long time. But last night, I went to sleep really, really early because I wasn't feeling well. And I got a full night's sleep, but that still woke me up in the middle of the night. And I finished off a book that I had been reading called Blitzed, which is about the amount of dope that was being done in World War II. And it got me, it's the second book I've read about Hitler and his doctor, guy named Morell, who was just like the all-time quack of all quack doctors. Some of the things that he was given the leader of Germany, right, the most evil cat that ever lived, he was whacking this dude with all kinds of dope. And the crazy thing is that they were giving the entire country this drug called Privatin. And I mean, literally the entire country's on it. The more that you research this, the more you realize that it was sold in pharmacies without prescription. You could get this anywhere. And it was considered the drug you could do without being a dirtbag, right? Like if you were a drinker and you had a problem with it, you were considered weak. It was like the antithesis of what they were trying to preach, which was this ubermensch, this Superman BS. And if you had a problem with alcohol, or if you had a problem with pain medication or something where you were owned by a substance, you were just a dirtbag as far as the German population was concerned. Although this Privatin, this drug that they had just come out with called Privatin, was completely different because it made you work hard for the motherland. It made you alert. It kept people thin, right? So that even if there was a lack of food, nobody seemed to mind much because they were tweaking. The entire country was eating this stuff. Now, by the way, at the height, Merck was pressing 850,000 tabs a day and could not keep up with the demand. That's a lot of meth. And that's all Privatin was methamphetamine. And I don't mean a fancy, it was methamphetamine. It was it. In fact, it's still around today. It's just now sold under the name Digoxin. We've talked about Digoxin a buttload of times on the lifeboat. If you start to go up the food chain for ADHD medication, and I'm referring to stimulant ADHD medication. I know that there's now non-stimulant ADHD medication that works in a different way, but I'm talking about the old school stuff. You started out at Ritalin, and the next one up was like Dexedrine or dextromethamphetamine or whatever, Dexies, and then up from that, actually, it would go Adderall would be second, and then Dexedrine would be the third, and then the very top of the food chain was Digoxin. And Digoxin is just crystal meth in a pill. That's all it is. Strong meth in a pill that will keep you up for days. And this is what the entire country was on. So this blitzkrieg thing they were doing in World War II, this lightning war, had a whole lot less to do with the machinery than it did the human beings. You could get in a car and put your foot to the floor, even in 1945, and pretty much keep that thing going around the clock. I mean, there were some breakdowns, but Germany was making pretty good engines, right? The machinery of war could go around the clock. What couldn't was human beings. So when they came out with this lightning new idea of the blitzkrieg, I promise you, it had a hell of a lot less to do with the fact that these machines could drive than it did that they demanded soldiers stay awake for 50 hours. When they went to attack France, they got there before any of the French roads could come to back them up. They got there so fast. Winston Churchill was quoted as saying the biggest shock in his life was the attack and how fast the men got there. None of them had slept. They were literally an army that was going around the clock and just popping Digoxin one after the other. They had lieutenants dropping dead of heart attacks. They had captains dropping dead of heart attacks. People were dropping left and right on this stuff. But Hitler was driving the army. Now, of course, he wasn't doing this stuff yet. Was not a fan of drugs. He didn't eat meat. He was a bit of a weirdo. Didn't like the sun. Didn't like the rain. Didn't like the snow. He certainly wasn't the Ubermensch that he was preaching. But as the story in both books that I read seemed to back up, Hitler got to one occasion where he was so sick that he wasn't going to be able to attend a meeting for the first time ever. And Dr. Morell, who had been his personal physician for a while and traveling with him, he had about 3 doctors at the time. He had about 3 doctors at the time. He ended up getting rid of 2 others, right? Because Morell that day said, I'm going to give you a shot. Every day he'd been giving him a shot of testosterone, and he had also been giving him a shot of various vitamins. This day he put Privatin in the needle. And if you've ever shot up meth, I don't care how bad you feel. You're not going to feel bad for 8 to 10 hours. You're going to feel like $1 million. I mean, it's going to release more dopamine than your body has ever seen. On its craziest day, your body has never come anywhere close. If you look at what drugs do in like huge quantities in the body in terms of doubling or tripling or quadrupling or whatever dopamine, the top of the food chain for that is meth. And in an injection, the top of the food chain. Nothing is ever going to give you more feel-good chemical in one shot than a shot of meth. Not yet. Like, they hadn't come up with anything yet that's going to do that. Now, that day, he started on Patton. And by all accounts, he stayed on it for the rest of the war. So this dude would stay awake for ridiculous periods of time. This did not change until close to the end of the war, when they were doing really poorly. Things were not good, yet Hitler seemed to remain very optimistic. Most people around him thought that they maybe had a secret weapon, because no matter how bad the war was going, this dude just kept talking about how there's no chance they were going to lose and anything else. And as it turns out, the history now says that what he was getting injected with, and it started on right after a very long campaign he had been on trying to secure funds from other countries while losing the war, out of energy, out of everything, and on his way to see Mussolini, who by all accounts is ready to tell him, we're out, right? This isn't going good. You're on your own. We're not doing this. And Dr. Morell fixed up a shot that he skin popped. He gave this to the Fuhrer subcutaneously, right under the skin. And mixed in this was something called Eucadol, right? Which is still manufactured today. But Eucadol was oxycodone, right? Percodan. It would later be called Percodan, and it would also be called OxyContin once they added a time release to it. But it's the exact same drug, right? It's the synthetic, first really great synthetic painkiller that came out. They were calling it Eucadol after the war. Since they lost the war, it's now called Percodan. If they had won the war, I'm sure it would still be called Eucadol. But he was getting a big shot of oxy. On top of that, he was getting 5 milligrams of cocaine. Yep. Pharmaceutical grade, no joke, cocaine. And 3 milligrams of Privatin. And 3 milligrams of Privatin is just crystal meth. So he was doing a speedball with meth, blow, and oxy in 1944, 1945. Yes. Thank you, Sling Blade. We're going to talk about that. So I'll leave that one up there for a minute. But this was, for all intents and purposes, people, a speedball, right? I mean, a ripping speedball, because I have actually mixed that in that exact same recipe up. No lie. I mean, I've done Coke, Speed, and Oxy in a shot, and it's absolutely ridiculous. But he walked in the first time he had ever done the speedball. They gave him one under the skin, and he went, "Ooh, whatever that was, I feel a hell of a lot better." So he asked for another one. And Dr. Morell said it would be a more profound effect if we were to put this in a vein, to which Hitler said, sure. And he took a speedball in the vein, right? The taste, everything associated with that. I'm talking about a ripping buzz. Normally, you would go straight up, and when the straight down starts, the heroin buzz kicks in, right? The oxycodone buzz would kick in. But he had enough speed in there that, according to history, he went in, and before Mussolini could say hello, Hitler started talking, and they said it was an embarrassment. Like, history literally looks back on this, with mockery. But for 3 hours, he did not stop talking. It looked like he wasn't breathing. They said he was talking without taking a breath. And he did this for 3 hours until they said that Mussolini was literally covered in Hitler's sweat. He didn't pull out of the war. And a whole lot of really bad decisions. Obviously the whole two-front thing didn't work out, but there were a series of really hideous decisions that were made. And if we've got a lot of people on the lifeboat who have done plenty of methamphetamine. And when you're up for, say, 6 days, 7 days, you start to believe that the people around you are out to get you. And there is a person listening to me right now, because I saw their name in the comment section, who has just been experiencing this. Somebody in their life has just been doing this, where everybody is out to get them. And I've been working with this person, and I said, you have to understand that when you stay awake for 7 days, the brain starts to do really screwy things. You know how we're always talking about how important it is when we go to sleep and our brain does that dreaming thing? And you go, I don't dream. Trust me, you dream. Now, there are people who don't remember their dreams, which is fine, right? But you're dreaming, because if you didn't, you would be psychotic. That's how it works. If you deprive somebody of sleep for a long enough period of time, they go cuckoo, because we absolutely have to work through things in our subconscious while we are unconscious. That's just how it works. So when you stay awake for 7 days, you become really, really paranoid. Now, imagine being a guy trying to take over the entire planet and murmurs all around you of people going, I don't know, this guy's doing a really good job, right? Looks like we're losing this war. And this dude hasn't slept in 5 or 6 days. You know, the paranoia that was going on. And then someone tries to blow him up with a bomb, right? And there was a movie made about this. I believe Tom Cruise was in it. But there was an assassination attempt on Hitler, which did not work, obviously. But it scared the crap out of him, and it made him paranoid as hell, and he just started whacking anybody that was even close to him. For real, like straight mob stuff. Anybody even close to him, take him out and kill him. And sort of started from scratch. And the one jackwagon that he kept really close nearby was Dr. Morell. And according to history, and according to this book, it wasn't until the bunker, right? At the very end of the war, when Hitler was in his bunker, the one that he was going to end up taking his own life in, if you believe that version of the story. But the end bunker where they found Eva Braun and Hitler's body, supposedly, and the dog was in there as well, half burned or whatever. But he didn't fire the doctor until the bunker. And history claims that he screamed at him and said, you've been giving me opiates all this time. How could you? I'm going to tell you something. I have a real struggle. I really have a struggle with that as a concept, but whatever. So Sling Blade says, I've seen video of Hitler at the Olympic Games. He was tweaking worse than most people I've ever seen. Now I'm going to take that a step farther and say, I saw that clip of film and I watched it. I'm not joking you, probably 100 times. And I've never seen anybody tweaking that bad. And I've been in some really weird tweak-a-thons in my life. But if you look at that video closely, I'm not trying to, we've never been a PG channel, right? But if you watch that video closely, Hitler is in his left hand holding a pistol, watching the Olympics, and he's vibrating. People, I will encourage you. If I wish I was one of those guys that could pull this up. I'm just not that dude. I don't think I'm ever going to be that dude. I'd love to be able to pull something up and say, hey, check this out. However, I'm not. So it's the 1936 Olympics. This is not a tough thing to look up, right? And there's really only about one clip. So if you look up, Hitler tweaking at 36 Olympics, I promise you're going to get it. But the man is vibrating like a tweaker only does, right? His one leg is bouncing up and down like it will not stop. And his fingers are doing this one on his bouncing knee at the same time. It's going back and forth. In the other hand, he's holding a pistol, right? Barrel down and rubbing it against his crotch. I mean, there's no mistaking what this dude's doing. It's if it were anybody else on planet Earth, he'd have been arrested. Honest to God, especially in that day and age. But the funniest part of the clip of film is look at everybody else, right? Because this is prim and proper Germany, right? So all of the citizens there are like this. I'm not kidding you, right? Like they're not moving. Nobody in that clip of film looks real. They all look like cutouts. except for Hitler, who is vibrating, right? Like a sex toy. I mean, literally just humming. It is a really ridiculous clip of film. It is worth looking up. But
I can't believe nobody told him to check.
What's that?
I can't believe nobody said in the moment, dude, chill.
Right. Well, nobody said anything to him like that. Johnny says, I can't believe no one told him to chill out. There's no chance in hell anyone was going to tell him at that point, especially to be chilling out. There was all the hope in the world in 36 that, you know, they were working in factories around the clock, right? Buying Privatin over the counter, and the whole country was tweaking. And it was considered a patriotic duty to be able to put in 16-hour days. You know, that was just considered de rigueur. Everybody was, he was demented to beat hell. I mean, he is literally evil incarnate. But history just repeats itself over and over and over again, right? By the way, we were doing it too. We were not really getting heavy into the methamphetamines yet in our army. We were using Benzedrine, I think, is what we were giving to the troops at that point. But we were doing it too. We were giving, because at that point, right, in the late 30s, early 40s, we understood that you could push the human body amazingly with the use of amphetamines. This was a pretty new concept. This was a pretty new synthesized substance. And you could push the hell out of a human body. They just didn't realize what it did to the dome. And that really, I think, was World War II was going back to the dawn of man, guys. I've been doing drugs before they went into war, right? Mushrooms, getting drunk as hell, you know, rubbing the belladonna on themselves. There's so many different ways. If you ever do a little research on the whole, I'm not even going to go there. Rutland. Anyway, there are so many different, there are so many different, throughout history, so many different stories of people using different substances to get hopped up before they went into battle. This is nothing new. But World War II, it became part of the weaponry. Like, this was part of the battle plan. And it wasn't haphazard. It was manufactured. It wasn't them going out and collecting, you know, berries and making something. Like, this was every single day, we're going to be issuing this. Pilots and the Panzers, the guys that did the tank divisions, were issued chocolate, right? Chocolate. The chocolate all was laced with speed, and it was only given to them. Methadone did become a thing in World War II. Now, in the Nazi defense of methadone for World War II, Dalufene was designed to be a painkiller that you could give to somebody and have it. They were looking for the longest half-life you could possibly find in a drug, in a painkiller, right? How long it takes for half of the dose that you just took to be processed out of your body, right? They talk about that a lot in drugs. So what was the half-life of whatever the opioid was that was being used in the battlefield at that time? They wanted that doubled or tripled or whatever. So, and that's an effective painkiller. Whether you hate or love methadone or whatever, it is a very effective painkiller, and it works for a very, very, very long time, right? Like a very, very long time. Sling Blade says, mushrooms wouldn't work on me before battle. They made me love everything, even the lint balls under the dryer. Yeah, that is pretty good. I don't know that it would do a lot of good for me either. I always get very introspective when I do fungus. For me, it's not really I've never really, I shouldn't say never, but in my adult life, I never considered that a party drug. As a kid, I might have done that, but as I got older, I kind of tried to get philosophical if I did it. But as I say, history continues to repeat itself, right? I mean, we know that our soldiers in Vietnam were, you know, unbelievable amounts of them came back strung out on heroin. It was absolutely part of their plan to try to get dope to the soldiers. Everything they could do to try to get strung out for, you know, obvious reasons, right? A fighting force that is hopped up on a drug like heroin is not terribly effective. And it was also, you know, they were taking a ton of money. But I had a very close friend who was a Vietnam vet and a heroin addict. black guy named Lenny, was one of the funniest dudes ever. God rest his soul. And he used to talk about Vietnam all the time. And he said they used to come by in the day and sell us our dope. He said, and then they would shoot at us at night. He goes, and it would be the same people. He said it was no joke. Like you would see him. He goes, but in the day, it was all good. He said they would come by and drop off their stuff and they'd pay him out. Vietnam, and I'll tell you what, it's going on right now. I'm not getting political. This is a drug show, right? But there was an attack that just recently happened where a bunch of guys came in on paragliders, right? And there's a really a great interview you can see where they talked to a gentleman who was captured and said, you have no idea that the stuff they were doing, they call Captagon. It's just another form of Privatin. It is. It's a hopped up version of a new synthetic type of speed, but they were doing grips of it. And, you know, one of the things that they found, and one of the reasons that militaries really dig amphetamines is because in really large doses, fear is eliminated, right? That is something that, that happens. And, you know, again, go back to World War II, and you can the doses of amphetamines that were given to kamikaze pilots before they went up in the air is stuff of legend. You know, like they would get these people into and if you've ever done a shot of meth, I mean, I know we've got people on here that are recovering from that drug. There's not much in the drug world. I've done a lot of stuff. Like the new stuff I haven't done. I've been sober for 8 years. So all of this new garbage that people are doing, I haven't done. But, you know, as far as standard drugs go, I've done pretty much everything that you can get your hands on. And a big shot of speed, there's very little in the world that will just wreck you like that. It's and it does for such a long period of time. Sling Blade says, no fear, no pain, no guilt. And that's the truth. And this is what they found. And they thought, perfect, we can create the super soldier. The trouble is, after about day 5, there's no telling what that super soldier will be shooting at, right? His own people that don't exist, because you start to see things. I remember a day, like it was yesterday, riding in a car with my brother Johnny and another gentleman after being awake for a really, really, really long time. And I don't mean partying. We were using this crap so that we could continue to work at an office. And we were just putting in 16, 17-hour days at this office. It was absolutely ludicrous. And we were doing it for, you know, a month, 2 months at a time, just going really hard. And we were on a particularly long run of not getting any sleep at all. We would go home, watch a little TV, throw on a different set of clothes and go back. And it was a mass hallucination. I'm not kidding you. Like 3 people in the car saw something that wasn't there. Most assuredly saw something that was not there. And when you stay up too long on that stuff, bad things happen. Like I had a cellmate in prison that was driving a load of weed. That was his business, so to speak. He would drive truckloads of marijuana from Mexico here into Arizona, and he would do it through the back and end up in some farmer's field, and then haul ass to the main road, kind of a setup. And he did this all the time. And he used to get to keep the truck, and he'd get like 25 grand for doing the load. But it's a lot of drugs, and he carried a gun. It's a dangerous kind of a proposition. And this dude stayed up so long that he got out and shot a saguaro cactus. The way they caught him was he was convinced that the people that he was working with had set him up, that his load was supposed to get caught so that a larger load could come through behind him. And he kept seeing things out of the side of his eye. And I mean, what he's seeing is saguaro cactuses. He's driving through the desert. He got out and unloaded an entire clip into one. And he said, right as he was trying to get the clip into the other one, he heard the rat, of a automatic weapon. And he looked up, and there were people everywhere. But that's how he got caught with his load. He's a guy that just had stayed up for so many days that he literally started shooting at things that didn't exist. It's a rugged thing to stay awake longer than you're supposed to. Your body just does not deal very well with it at all. Oh, damn. You know why I'm putting that up there? Because I love Janis Joplin. I have always loved Janis Joplin. I have got a thing for Janis. I've always had a thing for Janis. One of the saddest clips of film. You can see it on the web if you look for it, but there's a clip of film of her sitting on the front of the stage, dangling her feet off the edge and washing a bottle of Percodan down with a bottle of Southern Comfort. And it's just, I don't know, man. I thought it was so cool the first time I saw it as a kid. You know what I mean? Like, it was one of those things I looked at and was like, check it out. That's awesome. And then you get older and it's just the saddest clip of film. Honest, it just hurts. Sling Blade says, I don't sleep well anyway. The last thing I need is speed. I'll tell you what, I don't like the drug. I'm not a fan of the way it makes you feel. But if you were trying to design something for a war, right? It's a pretty good concept. Now, we got a lot of people that have asked me based on a question that someone asked. I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before, about my opinion concerning the fact that we have a big shortage right now of not only Suboxone and Subutex, but a lot of other pain medication, and this is happening all over the United States. And there's a theory that's circulating that it's driving people to the street where there's more dope that can kill them. And this is a theory that, by the way, I'm putting this out because a lot of you have written to me about it. And I understand the theory. It's a theory, right? And it's not a bad theory. There's some stuff that makes sense there. If you go back, I do a video called Smoking Gun, I think is what the video is called. I don't know how long ago. It was 7 or 8 months ago, but I'll tell you something scary as hell. So we found my friend Mark Wages and I, through somebody on the boat, actually, a girl named Ilea, mod here. Ilea found some research, sent it to us, and it was really fascinating stuff. It was about that word that starts with the letter V, that if I say, they'll demonetize this video because they're going to be assuming that I'm talking about that thing that they gave to everybody in the US, right? Back when we were wearing masks. You know what I'm talking about? The big V? Okay. Well, they were developing one for opioids, not opiates, but opioids, for synthetic dope. And the concept was that this stuff that they would inject you with, it would attach itself to the morphine molecule, right? The bastardized version of the morphine molecule, because it's not really a morphine molecule, right? It would be the fent or whatever, but it's a version of the morphine molecule, and it would attach itself to it, and that would not allow it to pass through the blood-brain barrier. That's the theory. And they're spending a lot of money on this. So this is a cool concept, yeah? You think, hey, I could get a shot, and I would be immune to dope. Right? You give me this shot, and I don't even care how strong it is. If it's carfentanil, the stuff couldn't kill me. No matter how strong the dope is, it couldn't kill me. So this is a pretty cool concept. You start thinking about this and you go, damn, thank God. It's about time somebody started doing this kind of a project, right? And then sadly, we did I wonder who's funding this. Because anytime you see research done, the most important part of the question is who's funding the research? Who's paying for it? Because that's interesting, right? If it happens to be the people that manufactured this stuff, you could say, well, maybe you'd like to be able to inject this to anybody that works around this stuff, because it's got to be a freaking hazard if you're experimenting on things like carfentanil, right? That would make sense. You know who's doing it? You know who's putting up all the money? DARPA. If you know who DARPA is, then you're probably bummed out that there's who's putting up the money, right? DARPA are the scientists who work for our military. They are the enemy in every good 1980s movie that wanted to take the alien and turn him into a weapon, or wanted to take the football player and turn him into a weapon, or wanted to take the cool car and turn it into a weapon, right? But DARPA wants to turn everything into a weapon. That's usually what DARPA does. It's their job. You can't be mad at them. However, it's pretty scary to me that they're trying to develop a vaccine for opioids, because it would be very easy to instead of use a bomb, if you were to just use carfentanil instead and just spray it out of an airplane like you would a crop duster, everybody in the city's dead. Now you send in a cleanup crew that's all vaccinated, right? This becomes a super weapon, right? Opioids become the strongest weapon on planet Earth. And I kind of feel like right now we might be sitting in a petri dish here in the US while they test it. Honestly, why would a dope dealer keep doubling the strength of his dope? Why would a dope dealer keep killing off his customers? But Marie, we go live at 5 a.m. and 5 p.m. Pacific time. That's on the U.S. West Coast. 5 a.m. and 5 p.m. Pacific time. So it's a frightening concept to me that this is who's out there trying to do this research, right? Because again, and I try to explain this a lot, and if I beat it to death, people, I apologize, but it's kind of yeah, I beat this to death, but I think that it needs to be beat to death. You can't get stronger than a poppy. So if you're a heroin addict, you can't keep doubling the strength of your heroin if it comes from a poppy, right? So if it's natural, if it's heroin, if it really came from a poppy, it's only going to get so strong. Now, that dude might grow poppies that the sap is stronger on, and his heroin might be stronger than my heroin, right? But it's only going to get as strong as that plant. Think about it like weed, right? It ain't going to get stronger than the plant, right? Unless you start doing dabs or you start doing something where you played with that plant, right? And you see you did something else to it. Well, with opioids, you don't start with a poppy. You start in a laboratory and you take the basic morphine molecule and you make it out of chemicals. You replicate what nature did on the poppy. Great concept. Now we don't have to grow all the stuff. Now we don't have to go to war over who has what poppy fields and all that. It's a great concept, you know? But the trouble then becomes that with opioids, you can continually double, triple, quadruple, 100 times, whatever you want. You can do anything in terms of doubling, tripling the strength of the dope. Oh, Martha, they've been doing it forever. And it was also pretty popular in the federal prison system. I'm not a big fan of Whitey Bulger, but if you do research, it's out there. It's easy to find. Whitey Bulger was while incarcerated in the Bureau of Prisons in the United States of America, he volunteered for a program to be tested to be a test patient for LSD. And when you read what he was getting paid for, they were injecting him. The first injection he got was 1/4 gram. If you guys have any idea how LSD works, like this is a concept that should literally terrify you. It should make you shake where you are sitting, because acid is done in micrograms, right? They're not done in grams. Like you wouldn't. It's not something somebody would do, but they did it to him, and that was the opening dose. They increased it as it went. And he said he was so terrified after the first one. You know why he kept going back? Right? And it wasn't the $53, which I think is what they paid those guys. Right? They went back because it was going to knock about 5 months off your sentence if you did this thing. I'll tell you what, I would have let him do it to me. You know what, Martha? If somebody says that you're volunteering for something that's going to let you out of prison a little bit earlier, that's not volunteering. I mean, even if that's what they want to call it, it's not volunteering. You know what I mean? I would have let him cut off a finger, voluntarily, if they would have let me out of prison 6 months earlier. And I'm not kidding you. If they had come to me 6 months before the day I had to walk out and said, hey, could you go without this? I would have said, I can go without too. Let me out of here. There's nothing I wouldn't have done. And those guys walked in there and didn't, I promise you, didn't get a damn good explanation of what lysergic was. You know what I mean? It's a pretty ugly drug. It's especially 1/4 gram. I can't, honest to God in heaven, I can't wrap my brain around it. Now, Whitey's a piece of crap. You know what happened to Whitey is kind of he died of natural causes. If you're a guy that is a rat and you were a head of a criminal organization, getting a couple couple of shivs put in your eyes and your tongue cut out, I guess is probably yeah. Martha says MK Ultra. There's a lot out there. Here you can deep dive the ever loving crap out of it, and the names that come up, you can. I know that people love to say tinfoil hats and this and that. I had a tinfoil. I used to pick on people so badly for all of that, and then a guy in prison said to me, "Hey, have you ever used yours?" And I said, "My what?" And he's like, "Your FOIA." And I'm like, "I don't know what FOIA is." And he said, "It's the freedom." Yeah, a quarter of a gram of acid. Freedom of Information Act, right? FOIA, Freedom of Information Act. In the US, you can file for Freedom of Information Act, and prisoners do it every day because you got nothing else to do. And they can't deny you a FOIA. There's no way to deny FOIA. And for all they know, it has something to do with your case or whatever. So prisoners it's very easy for us to request FOIA. And you're allowed, I think, 4 requests a quarter, maybe. I don't remember the exact number. I don't want to misquote, but there's a limit to how many you can do. So this guy, because he literally lived with a tinfoil hat on, came to me and said, "Hey, can I use yours then? I'll tell you what I want to file on, and you just, and he's like, I said, "Sure." Well, I got the FOIA crap during a lockdown, and it's this tall, right? There's so much crap in there, and there's no way I can send it to him under the door, right? We're on lockdown, so I just started reading the stuff. And I started getting addicted to doing FOIA requests and reading stuff. And the MK Ultra stuff will scare the hell out of you. I mean, it's wildly, wildly redacted. That when you get it, it's like every 9th word, there's a big black bar. Even with FOIA, there's so much that's redacted. But you don't have to be a genius to realize they were pumping people full of LSD to try to create killers. I mean, literally is what they were trying to do. That was the hope. And the question then becomes, did Whitey Bulger go into Alcatraz, the piece of crap killer that died in the BOP, or did giving a guy, a quarter and half gram shots, IV shots of LSD, did that just cook him and turn him into that? Because there's another really odd book I just finished reading about Charles Manson, and it was a 20 some odd years in the making. Oh, knock it off, squirrel. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of evidence that ties. Our government's done some funky stuff. You know what I mean? I love America, but I love its dirt, its trees, its people. I'm not a huge fan of the machine that is our country. It's done some really, really. Oh, Amy Whitehouse. Yeah, Amy was another one that had. You know what? I try. I honestly try, but I just can never get what I want done. It's frustrating. I have so little skill with a computer. I just finished watching your other video, and here you are. I should go to bed. It's 12:30 a.m., but I love to see you live. Love your content message. Thank you, Seth. Where is it? 12:30. Goodness. I'm not sure where you are. You're across the pond. That's where you are, right? Gotta be. I'm not sure. Oh, Martha, I'm so glad you asked this question. I really am. I'm so glad you asked this question. Everybody get this one? Tommy, do you think that agency right there put crack on the streets in California? The answer is yes, they did. And I say all the time, this is my opinion, right? This isn't my opinion. This is a fact. I promise you it is. That agency started the crack epidemic. They did it with a guy named Ricky Ross, not the guy that people buy the albums from today, right? Freeway Ricky Ross. Freeway did time in the Fed system in the same prison I was at, FCI Phoenix, right up the street. And yeah, they were supplying. That agency was supplying Freeway Ricky Ross with all the blow he could possibly need. Showed him how to cook it. Showed him how to everything. He was not that. Yeah, they absolutely took a guy off the street and made him the biggest crack dealer in the entire world, so that they could use. They were bringing the blow in from South America, and they were putting it on the street as crack. They were picking the cash up. They were using that cash to buy guns, and they were sending the guns back down to South America. And that's no joke. It's a stone cold fact. Absolutely a stone cold fact. And it's never a coincidence, people, that If we're fighting the Sandinistas in South America, where the biggest cash crop in the world is cocaine, all of a sudden the United States has a cocaine problem. We go to Afghanistan, right, where the biggest cash crop in the world is heroin. And all of a sudden, we have a heroin epidemic on the street. We never thought after 1974 we would ever see heroin on the street again. Surely people know that they would never go down that road. Right? Why would anyone go down that road? Because all of a sudden, the supply was unbelievably strong, unbelievably consistent, and unbelievably cheap. Right? No China white. People were jumping on. This was tar, right? Tar heroin, and all you could want. I promise you, it's never a coincidence that wherever our troops are, whatever the drug problem is there, it's coming your way in a big, big fashion. That's what's going to happen. It happened. We went from Contra war, Oliver North president, the whole shooting match. Absolutely. Iran Contra, it was so tied up with Freeway Ricky Ross and crack cocaine, all of it. Absolutely. It's history will not allow this one to be debated. Won't be. There's a documentary you can watch. I think it's called The Last Great White Hope, I believe is what it's called. If you look it up and that's not it, I'll apologize and then I'll find out what it is. But I think that's the name of the documentary, and it is fascinating. And the people in it are talking to you from the balconies of nondescript hotel rooms on islands because they're all hiding because people disappear. They really do. Our government unalives people that talk too bad about them. You got to be wicked careful. Dude, they were injecting liquid blow into Hitler. They were, and they were mixing it. They were mixing it with a little oxycodone liquid and some meth liquid. That's a speedball. I mean, that's a rocking combo right there, people. Take my word for it. Martha, so many lives ruined, and the friggin' hypocrites involved. I'm sorry. Oh, you know what? Start yelling the names of cities before I go off. Because the people that wrote those laws, like the crack laws, I want to tell you something. The crack laws were the most racist thing we ever did. And we've done a lot of racist things with the crack laws. You'd have a guy in federal prison that was in there for powdered cocaine, right? Always white. And you'd have a guy in there in the same unit who was in there for crack, right? And it was 10 to 1, in some cases 30 to 1 or 40 to 1. So if you got caught with a gram of crack, it was like getting charged with 30 grams of coke, which was just bizarre because 30 grams of coke would make, right? Makes no sense whatsoever. But it made sense because the people that were making the laws had little cocaine bullets in their pocket. So when they were up working at 2 a.m, they were all doing a little line. I mean, hell, that's not drugs. That stuff those black guys are selling and smoking, that stuff drugs, right? We got to get that stuff off the straight. Our current president stood up and held up a quarter and said, anybody that gets caught with anything this big is going to prison for a minimum of 10 years. And they did. Crap loads of them. Finally, the law was fixed. And all of those guys I was writing legal stuff for people as fast as I could to try to get people out. American Made. I don't know if I ever American Made. Do I know that movie? I don't know if I ever saw that movie, Purple Groove. Oh, yes. I haven't seen the movie, but I know what you're talking about. He plays Barry. I'm not going to get the guy's name. Barry. I read the book. I never saw the movie. It was after. I can't watch movies anymore. I don't know if you've been around long enough, but I can't watch films. The way they're edited screws my head up. I get really bad headaches. We always thought 3-letter agencies did it for control of population, but nowadays I can't wrap my brain around 300 plus dead a day. Thank you. I can't either. It's on Netflix. I hope you mean The Last Great White Hope. It's absolutely worth watching. It is a fascinating documentary. It really is. Yep, syphilis experiments in 1934. Absolutely, the Tuskegee stuff. We've been doing some really, really, really rank crap. Barry Seal. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you. That would have driven me nuts. A lot of movies based in reality by people who can't talk. Damn right. That is a great comment. That is a great comment. Oh, that is such a great comment. People, if you know how true that is, if you knew how true that is, there are so many films out there that spill the beans on so many things. I promise you, it's the truth because people can't talk. And the Barry Seal is a great example of that. The whole damn world knows what went on. The whole world knows what went on. And we let Barry Seal do a lot of really rank stuff. And that was all. I mean, he was basically the biggest pilot in that entire endeavor. However, not the only pilot, which would the book would lead you to believe he was the only pilot. He was not the only pilot doing that. I did time with one of the other ones in Arizona, in this state, and they actually let him out. He was one of the first people to be let out under the Compassionate Something or Other Release Act. He hit 85 years of age, and he had been in prison since, I don't know, 40 some odd years or whatever. And he was being let out basically. You get to that age and they just figure, what's he going to do? Start flying dope back and forth. He's done enough time, whatever. But he was actually released on a compassionate, which never happens. And he was about 6'7", really, really tall old man. And I know that when they saw all the paperwork filed and everything else, they thought 85. If you could have seen this dude, I promise you, he was in as good a shape as I am right now at 85. He took care of himself all the time. He was in prison, but I used to sit and listen to his stories. And he was, I mean, that was a real thing. They were flying massive amounts of and then packing the plane back up, right? It was drugs coming one way and guns going the other, and drugs going one way and guns going the other. It was just absolutely insane. Good morning, Pam. Glad that you're here. Ventura County in SoCal. Tommy, do I still watch old movies? I do. I love them. Old movies are shot usually with a lot less cameras, a lot less editing. And I don't have a problem with it, especially really old ones. But I probably watch more than anything else. I watch documentaries because they're usually one camera. So I never end up, having any issue with that. But yes, I love old movies. The Harrison Act in 1915 made it illegal to treat heroin addicts' withdrawals with opiate derivatives. Silent Scream, I think is the name of the book. Fantastic read about all of this. And yes, Martha's absolutely 100% right. And there is so much of our drug policy in this country can be traced back to the decisions of one or two idiots. I mean, I hate to be that guy, but it's the truth. Nothing. Prohibition has never worked for anything. It has not. And what we're finding now everywhere where they're truthfully experimenting with just letting people do whatever they want with drugs, the effects are not what anybody predicted. I mean, they really are not. What it comes down to is we create an environment where a small amount of powder becomes worth killing for, right? Because it's so much damn money that people are willing to do anything for a shot at making that kind of cash, especially if you come from a place where minimum wage American money would make you rich, right? How much, the risk to get once across that border, you can't blame anybody for that. I'm sorry, I can't. And I spent my whole life addicted to dope, and I never blamed the guys that brought the crap across. I didn't. I understand why people do that. It makes perfect sense to me. I'm not at all pissed at them. I'm not. I think we should do a better job at not letting it in. I'm a pretty big believer of that, and I wish that that the education on drugs that I got was a hell of a lot different than I did, Oh my God. It's a hero, right? That's a real no BS hero. Martha says, my grandfather worked with addicts as a missionary in New York City. The doctor he worked with was arrested for prescribing heroin to addicts. How tragic is that? But that's a freaking hero, man. It really is. I want to tell you something, people. It would be, I started this. I truthfully and honestly feel like I'm in this war on drugs, right? Like I honestly feel like this has become a very personal thing for me. And I started this with a completely different attitude about decriminalization and legalization and all that. I was staunch. Uh, I thought that all drugs should be illegal, including weed. I thought that we should not allow anything on the streets. And I have had a complete 180-degree shift in how I view this entire thing. And it's now based on 8 years of sobriety. I mean, in all honesty, when I was first sober is when I thought that. The longer I've been sober and the more I've worked with people who are addicts, the more I realize that we're not doing this right at all. We're not. I mean, we're doing a really bad job. I think if I could see into the future, right? If I could see what we're going to look like in 50 years, Lord willing that we're still on this planet in 50 years, I would really like to believe that 50 years from now, the way that addicts are treated will be so different than how it is now that you wouldn't recognize it.
We'll look back and go, can you imagine how they did things?
Exactly. It's me too. I dream of the day where we look back and go, we did what? We did what to these people? We made them stand in line at 5 o'clock in the morning to pick up a prescription so that they wouldn't be heroin addicts, right? If you've ever seen the line of shame at a methadone clinic, where we should be driving by and clapping, right? Getting out of the car and just clapping. Good for you, man. Good for you. Instead, that is not how we do it. We make them line up at 5 o'clock in the morning outside in the cold, right? Usually in a part of town.
Yeah.
And you know what happens? Dope dealers drive by all morning while they're standing out there waiting, freezing their asses off to go in. There's a dope dealer ready to front you a bag. You want one? Don't worry about it. It's on the house. Screw waiting in line for these people. You call me, I'll come to your house. I'll deliver this to you. Don't worry about this. For real. Like I was on a 2-year run, people. I hadn't done anything wrong in 2 years. I was going to a methadone clinic, driving a Porsche 911 with a whale tail. And I went in there and because of a series of unfortunate events, I had to clear out accounts to make payroll. My brother and I both did because New York hadn't wired us the money to pay everybody who worked for us. So like we're pawning stuff. We had like 70 employees. We're just trying to make payroll and we had a day to do it. And I got to the methadone clinic as it was closing and I went in and she's like, your wife didn't pay today. You have to pay or you're not getting your take home dose. So this is Friday. I went, you got to be kidding. You know, I was like, I'll give you a Rolex. Hold on to this until Monday. Are you kidding me? I'm like, look out the window. That's my car. What are we talking about? $60. Like, and I could literally go upon this watch. Give me 25 minutes, and the woman would not do it. And, I drove away cursing and punching the steering wheel, and a guy pulled up at the light next to me and just opened his mouth and looked at me, and his entire mouth was just filled with balloons. And then he pulled in front of me. And he took a left, and I pulled on the street, got behind him. I ran and jumped into his car, and he spit a whole bunch of them in his hand, dried them off on his jeans, and handed them to me with a phone number. I said, what do I owe you on this stuff? He said, don't even worry about it. Don't even worry about it. I probably did 9 years more dope after that day. You know? Hope. Like even now, looking back and going, they did what? They killed Buddha. I swear to God, the medical community killed Buddha. Those bitches killed him. I'm not even going to go down there. I'm not. Debbie says, hi. Seems like legal drug use is a soft kill of the populace, in my humble opinion. You know what? There are people who this is what's going to happen, Debbie. If no matter how you do it, whether you criminalize it and turn everybody who uses drugs into a criminal, or you legalize it, no matter what happens, about 3% are going to become addicted to the point that they're going to end up in prison or they're going to end up dead. That's about in both societies, right? In both extremes. If they let it completely wide open or they completely shut it down, 3% are going to end up in prison to dead, right? In the countries that either way, they're going to end up so screwed up that they cannot get off without massive intervention from the help of others. It's not going to change. But what's going to change is all of those people that just fart around with the stuff, that don't have a drug problem, that just burn a little weed here and there, or they do coke with friends 3 times a year or whatever. Those people who can't work in medicine ever again or be a lawyer or any of the things that you can't do because you got caught with a little bit of flour in your car, right? That's a messed up thing. And I've watched, I swear, if this is not the gospel truth, let the ground open up and swallow me. I sat watching a documentary with the guy in prison who said that his name is Ice. That's literally his last name, right? IC is the guy's last name. But he said to me, no, you're not blocked. He said, I'm in here on a 3rd strike, drug charge. I said, what was the 3rd strike? He said, I got caught with 1.5 ounces of weed. 1.5 ounces of weed. For people, that's what, a couple of weeks for a hard smoker. This is not a ton of dope, right? This is personal use, like you read about. I said, and they put you in prison for life on a 3rd strike for that. I said, I'm not trying to get in your business, man. Can I see your paperwork? I mean, I'm not questioning you, but I think I can help you, bro. I mean, if you're literally in here on a 3rd strike and your 3rd strike was 1.5 ounces of weed, let me file some paperwork on you. So he brings me out his case, and there's 2 arrests. I said to him, Ice, where's the 3rd arrest? And he's like, oh, I got caught for 1.5 ounces of weed. I'm like, I'm reading that. That's the 2nd arrest. Show me on this criminal history where your 3rd arrest is. This guy was 17 years in at this point. Right? Now, by the way, you can't appeal. You have 6 months to appeal. Now, we did a 2255 motion or whatever, and we actually got him a new hearing. I don't know what happened, but this cat, if he doesn't get a miracle, he's going to spend the rest of his life in prison over some weed, right? That's hideous. We're 80% of the prison population of the planet, and we're 4% of the population of the planet, which means we incarcerate everybody. And that's 80% of those people are in there for dope, one kind or another. Dope. It's a disease. And I understand it's a disease that people don't like, right? No one ever goes up and says, boy, you're a piece of crap with your lupus, right? Boy, you're a loser with your diabetes. It's shameful that you can't process sugar. I don't want you in my house or around my kids. I don't. How's that? Pretty weird, right? Do you take medicine for diabetes? You put a needle in your stomach once a day? I don't know. I want you around. It's pretty crazy, right? But in all honesty, I'm telling you, whether you want to believe it or not, we have a disease that is not different than type 2 diabetes. Decisions made over the course of your life, plus a predisposition to that disease, will enable you to get it, right? If you have the predisposition, then you probably shouldn't be drinking 2 cases of sugary beverage a day. You shouldn't be overeating and carrying your body mass index 20, 30 points higher than it should be, right? These are all things that we can agree on if you don't want to get. But the same person can do exactly what you do. And if they don't have that precursor, they're just going to be overweight, right? They're not going to get diabetes. Why? Because they don't have that disease. There are people who can drink, and there are people that can't, and there are people who can do drugs, and there are people that can't, right? It's a disease, like every other. It's a disease, but it sadly isn't treated like any other disease. And if you find out that you got cancer, you sprint to the hospital as fast as you can to find out who the oncologist is and what the plan is to try to radiate and then eliminate this tumor, right? Fast. I promise you, you'll sprint down there. But if your disease is addiction, it's the only disease that I know of that once you figure out you got it, you want to do everything you can to keep it. You don't want any help. You don't want to go anywhere near a damn hospital. You just want people to leave you alone so that you can continue to just live in your disease. I look forward to a day when we look back on the question of whether or not legalization is a good idea or not as an afterthought. It was like we really used to put people in prison for sniffing stuff. We used to put people in prison for getting high. I want people to be shocked at that. I'm sorry, I really do. There's dope in the penitentiary. Purple Groovy, I quit in prison. I didn't quit because I went to prison. I did dope every day in prison until the day I quit. I mean, I could get it every day. Until the day I quit, I did it every day. I promise you. Sending someone to prison doesn't mean that they're not getting high. It just means they're paying a hell of a lot more for their dope. That's all it means. The dope gets a lot more expensive, and you end up committing more crimes so that you can continue to get high. It's a terrible life. But thank God, a miracle will get you out of that life. And those miracles are a dime a dozen. I watch them every day. I promise you. All right, everybody. I'm going to be back. We'll see you about 11 hours from now, I guess. All right. I'm Captain Tommy. Not sure where the cat is. And we will see you this evening. Have a great day.
Those are good ones.